Hello, Michael Fleece here with an AFL season preview, and I'm going to try and do videos weekly to update on AFL, probably have hopefully highlights of the past week, and possibly top 10 plays or something like that, and then I will be making picks and talking about the upcoming weeks. So that is what you guys can expect. Right now, this episode probably won't have video because there hasn't been any games yet this season. So chances are it'll just be some random pictures or something. Hopefully it's not too boring, but there will probably be videos next week. Okay, so let's start off with some of the main storylines from the off-season. If you haven't really been following along at all with the AFL, Dallas has suspended operation, which basically means they folded, and there was talk they would move to Nashville, but the deal did not work, at least this year. There is talk they will still move next year, but no one knows for sure. And then also Tulsa moved to San Antonio, so they will be the San Antonio Talons now, and they have signed Aaron Garcia among many other players, and I think they have basically built a team that will be Arena Bowl contenders in its first year, so I have high hopes for San Antonio. And speaking of building good teams, the Soul have went out and basically built on paper what looks like it's going to be the best team in the league. At least that's what the majority of people believe, because on paper they have lots and lots of very good players. Tiger Jones, Donovan Morgan, they have Radabaugh at quarterback. They just have basically a stacked team, and they are acting like it. They are promising a championship by allowing fans to pre-order championship rings before the season even started, and they are using the slogan, "We got this," as in they've got the championship, and that's kind of rubbed some people the wrong way. I guess I don't really hate it, because I think all they're doing is setting themselves up to look really bad if they lose. And I will definitely be rooting for them to not win the championship. As a Mustangs fan, I never rooted for the Soul because of the division rivalry, but now I will probably be rooting against them even harder because of the fact that they have promised a championship basically before there's even been downplayed. So those are probably three of the biggest stories from the off-season. So now let's take a look at some of the teams around the league and how I think they're going to stack up. Okay, let's start with the American Conference, and we'll start with the Eastern Division, which is Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. I think Philadelphia's got to be the preseason favorite just based on raw talent alone. And really the one biggest question with them is how will all these guys play together as a team, because obviously raw talent doesn't always mean that you're going to be the best team. You got to work well together, and it's a team sport, so we'll have to see how the team chemistry works out with all these guys who are used to being one of the top players on their team. Might be a lot of egos. I really don't know, but that's definitely going to be something to watch. Then after Philadelphia, I think Milwaukee's got to be probably second, because just looking at how well they played last year at the end of the year, when they finally got a quarterback in Gino Guidugli, who I think is going to be very good. When he came in, he was right up there with the top 5 quarterbacks in QB rating, and he took a team that was not very good last year, and he won the last 3 games of the season with them, and then they've improved the team around him, I think. They've got a lot better offensive line, they got a lot of their defense returning, and so I think the Mustangs are probably going to be second in that division. I think they're going to be really good this year. Then third, I would probably go Pittsburgh, with Rowley coming in at quarterback. I think that that's going to be a really good addition, and I think they could do pretty well there. And then fourth is going to be Cleveland, just because I think all the other teams in the division really improved in the offseason, and I don't think Cleveland improved that much. And I know they won the division last year, but they were not dominant in the division by any stretch. They won it by one game, and it came right down to the end. And I don't think any team in this division was great last year, but I think they're all going to be pretty good this year. So this division will be tough, and I think it's much improved from last season. But once again, my rankings are Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, then Cleveland. Then we will move down to the Southern Division, and my favorite for this division preseason has to be the Orlando Predators, with Jacksonville losing Aaron Garcia, Georgia losing Purify. I think the Predators are left as the clear favorite. Tampa Bay, once again, has quarterback questions that I think could hurt them. New Orleans, I think, could be an improved team, getting Kurt Rocco at QB, but I don't think that they're quite as good as the Predators yet, but they could surprise some people. But my rankings would have to be probably Orlando number 1, Georgia number 2, then Jacksonville and New Orleans, I think, are both really close. Because I have faith that Les Moss is going to be able to put together a good team in Jacksonville. So I'd probably go with Jacksonville at 3, New Orleans at 4, and Tampa Bay at 5. Then let's go to the National Conference, and we'll start with the Central Division. My favorite for this division, I think, is going to have to be the Talons, with Garcia at quarterback. I think that they're going to have a very high-powered offense, and they've got obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the game. That really helps, defending Arena Bowl champion. So, number 1, I would have the Talons. Number 2, I'm going to have the Rush. I think that they're also going to be a very good team, and they're going to be close to the Talons. I think both these teams are probably playoff teams. They're both going to be really good. The Rush have Mikna coming back, and so those should be two high-powered offenses. Then, third, I'm going to have the Barnstormers. They have J.J. Redick at quarterback, and I think he's really good, but I don't know so much about the team they have built around him, if they're going to be able to make a playoff run or not. I think the National Conference is going to be really tough. But right now I have them at 3rd. And then 4th I would have Kansas City. And I'm just not really sold on a lot of the things the Command have done in the offseason, losing Redick. And they were a 6-win team last year. I don't know that they've necessarily improved a whole lot. And at the quarterback position they may have gotten worse. So I have Kansas City as 4th in the National Conference, or in the Central Division in the National Conference. Okay, now we move on to the Western Division, and in first, going into the season, I'm going to have to put Arizona, just because they were amazing last year. They had the best regular season record in the league last year, and they return a lot of those guys from last season, so I think they're going to have good team chemistry. Having the reigning MVP in Davila at quarterback, that's obviously going to be big for them, and getting Purify from Georgia will obviously help fill their receiver position. So I think that Arizona is going to be the favorite going into the season in the West, followed closely by San Jose, who I think's built a really talented team. They have Mark Grebe and Raymond Filia, which I think could be interesting. I don't know how they're going to use Filia. I would have to imagine Grebe would be the starter in San Jose. It's tough to imagine him not starting there, unless there's something that no one knows about that's going on. But I was a little surprised when they signed Filia, but it's going to be interesting to see how they use him, so that's something to keep an eye on. Grebe is coming off probably his worst season, at least as far as quarterback rating goes. in his career, and the SaberCats had a disappointing season last year, going 7-11 and finishing last in the division. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how the season plays out for San Jose, but going into the season, I have really high expectations for them, and I think they're definitely a playoff caliber team and a contender for the Arena Bowl. Then at third in the division, I'm going to put Utah. I think Tommy Grady is a very good quarterback, obviously, and I think he's basically the reason I have them over Spokane. And then obviously Spokane is fourth in my rankings preseason. It's going to be interesting. They have a lot of new parts, and losing Kyle Rowley, who wasn't even their starter at the end of last year, I guess. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm not really sure what you're going to get out of Spokane, but they seem to always put out a pretty good team on the field. So I think they're still going to be hovering at least around 500. I think the West is pretty tough from top to bottom, probably the toughest division from top to bottom. So it wouldn't surprise me if any of these four teams made the playoffs. I think they're all definitely playoff contenders, but those are my rankings for the Western Division. Okay, as far as my picks for Week 1 in the Friday night game between Pittsburgh and Orlando, I think this is going to be a really good matchup between two teams that I believe both have playoff potential. But I got to give Orlando the edge in this one, especially playing at home in the jungle. So I'm going to go with Orlando. Then Utah versus San Antonio. Both these teams, I think, have really, really good quarterbacks. And it's going to be interesting to see how San Antonio kind of gels together as a team playing in their first game together. But I'm going to trust Aaron Garcia, and I'm going to pick San Antonio over Utah at home. Then Tampa Bay versus Chicago. This one, the main factor is basically that Tampa Bay has uncertainty at the quarterback position again, losing Nick Hill a little while before the season. I think that'll hurt them, and that's why I will go with Chicago at home over Tampa. Then we have Arizona at San Jose, and I think this is going to be a really good game. These are two of the top teams in the league, at least on paper, in my opinion. And division rivalry, so that will be a really good game. I'm going to go with the Rattlers winning this one on the road, just because of how good that team was last year and how many guys they returned. I think they're going to play really well together, even right at the start of the season. So I will pick the Rattlers to win this one on the road. Then we have the two Monday games, and the first one is between Georgia and Cleveland at Georgia. And I think both these teams have a lot of question marks going into the season. Georgia lost Purify, who was one of the best receivers in the league. And Cleveland has Dutton coming back off an injury. So, I mean, both of them, you don't really know what's going to happen. Georgia signed Derek Lee to hopefully replace Purify. But there are still question marks to see how that's going to work out. For this pick, I'm going to go with Georgia at home. I think they're just a little bit better of a team overall, and playing at home will obviously help, so I'm going to go with Georgia over Cleveland. Then Iowa and Spokane is the last game, and I really think these two teams are fairly evenly matched. I'd give the QB advantage to Iowa overall, I think. Raderink is a very good quarterback, but I think it's going to be really tough to go into Spokane and win. So I'm going to go with the Shock at home on this one, and mostly because they're playing at home. I think that'll help them out a lot. I think Iowa might be a little bit more talented of a team, but we'll have to see. So just to recap, my picks are Orlando, San Antonio, Chicago, Arizona, Georgia, and Spokane. So I am out of time, and that is my first episode. So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week.